Happy New Year, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Today, I brought you over to talk about my experiences with the Kinetic trainers. Most recently, I purchased the R1 version trainer here. This is their latest, greatest machine. It's been out for a couple of years now. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what that experience has been like, what troubles I've had, some things I've done to resolve some issues, and then another issue that the trainer seems to have that I found a fix for that I want to actually show you how to do it. We're going to do it. I haven't even done it yet, haven't even opened it yet. But at first I want to back up and tell you that I'm not a professional mechanic. I have not spent any time working on these types of devices. Kinetic did not give these to me in any way, size, shape, or form. I paid for all of these. And I don't have any other trainer experience to go against this. I've always been the sort of person who tries to find the best possible deal for the best money or the best device, the best, return on investment, let's say, of all my bike stuff, including my trainers. And Kinetic has always offered that. I had regular mag trainers for a long time that I would spend time on. I was never really working that hard on them all winter long. And then I said, you know what, it'd be cool to have something with some power. So I went along and I bought the Kinetic trainer that had data, but it was not controllable. So there was no controlling this in using Zwift. As a matter of fact, this first version here was just a basic mag trainer. I actually had the larger flywheel on it. It was a nice trainer, but in Zwift, it didn't really work well. And you couldn't use Zwift at all. The first version, you could only use Kinetic's own software. That was this version here. Then they came out a year later, Kinetic got smart and said, oh yeah, we really should compete with all the other trainers out there that are using Zwift and Trainer Road and all that. And they came out with another sensor that you could just pop onto your device and onto your trainer and be able to now use Zwift or Trainer Road or any of the other ones that are out there. And that was kind of cool. It allowed you to be able to now get power readings. You could get your cadence and all these different sorts of things that you might want. And it allowed for a much better experience. But when you're using Zwift, you quickly realize, well, yeah, I'm getting clobbered on the hills because I don't have that resistance to bump up my power. Yeah, I can switch gears, but it's still not the same. And then when you get to the top of the hills, everybody else is slowing down. Their power's dropping rapidly. Yours is still sitting at, let's say, 200 watts at the top of a hill, and you start blowing by everybody. So it was fine. It was great for a year or so. Actually, a couple of years I had that trainer. And then I'll tell you, actually, I sold that trainer to somebody. Within the first day, they broke it, and of course, they came right back to me. And this is where Kinetic has been really good. I actually got that trainer warranted through me for this guy who bought the trainer. He ended up just tightening up the back of the trainer so tight that he blew out the back side of it, which is actually plastic or nylon. He broke it. All good though. They replaced the part for him under warranty, and it was good to go. So what I did then is I went ahead and I bought this trainer right here. This is the T4000 series trainer. It is not the rock and roll version, as you can see. This trainer was great. No issues with it. I actually ended up getting two of these. I ended up with two of these. I had one for myself, one for my son. Again, it was another great sale. Kinetic has a lot of big sales, and usually the vendors will also adhere to that. My first one I got from Bike Nashbar, RIP Bike Nashbar. I know you guys know what I mean. Yes, the name's still out there, but it's not the same Bike Nashbar. And this one I got from another vendor who was matching a Kinetic sale, and then my R1 I actually bought direct from Kinetic. This trainer here, the wheel-on version, used that for a year or so, never had any issues. It would consistently program, you could configure it and program it consistently all the time. It really just performed very well. It very rarely had any issues. If it did, you could just do a quick reboot and it was fine. And I really started to enjoy Zwift even more. I really just had a great time using this. The downfalls, right? The downfalls to this trainer is the wheel slips. You get upwards of 9-10% and the rear wheel starts to slip. Yes, I had a trainer wheel on it. I had the red training tire on there. And I kept my tire inflated to the maximum allowable amount, and I did all that stuff, but it still slips. So then what happened is this year in September of 2021, Kinetic dropped the price of this trainer, which came out 2 years ago at $1,000, well, 3 years ago now. And then it dropped down to like $800, and I think right now it's sitting on the site at either $700 or $800. But they dropped the price of this device down to $560. So I just immediately pulled the trigger. So that's just too good a deal to pass up for a direct drive trainer. Having had zero issues with these trainers over a year and a half or so that I had them, why not? Such a good deal for a direct drive trainer. I went ahead and I jumped on this trainer. The first one that I got, this should have been the warning right here. The first one that I got did not work. It would not calibrate. The calibration would not happen at all. The clutches wouldn't engage at all. I called up Kinetic. I didn't call them. I emailed them, went through their form process, and they replaced it for me. Within days, I had a new one there, and I just shipped the old one back. So this one I get, and I go ahead and I'm able to get it calibrated. It does not calibrate properly at all. It is so far off, it's crazy. And you can find results of this online. If you go read some of the reviews and stuff like that, you can find some different results, and they had similar issues. Mine, once I got it calibrated, it went ahead and calibrated. On Zwift though, imagine full brake and then full freewheeling would all happen between 0% incline and then 2% incline, and then -2, right? That whole range was that narrow. It was unrideable. Now you might think to yourself, oh, well, hey, that's gonna be a great workout, right? No, when you can't turn the cranks over or even climb a hill, you can't even get your heart rate up because it's just so ridiculously difficult. So I ended up, reading through, and of course they say, oh, you gotta have it warm up more. So I kept playing around with it. I went out on Fuego flats there, and I just rode the flats for about an hour, just going through the motions. I got it warmed up, and I did it again. And it got a little bit better. And then I ended up doing it in Zwift. And when I went ahead and calibrated it in Zwift, it got a little bit better, but it still was way off. It just wasn't right. So then I said, you know what? The problem seems to be when the freewheel is just spinning forever. When you go to calibrate it, the freewheel would just spin and spin and spin. And this is also when I had another issue that started to crop up where it would drop out of the game when you started to go down a hill, right? So you climb, and it would be fine. As soon as you crested the hill and went down the other side, the clutches would disengage and you would freewheel, but then that's it. It would no longer read your change in elevation. So any pitch up, it just won't read. Any pitch down, it won't read. You're stuck in no man's land. Usually a reboot would fix this. So anyhow, going back to the calibration piece. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna try slowing down the freewheel. So this is one of the fixes that I came up with that helped resolve some of those issues. As I went ahead and I did it in Zwift the first time, which was a mistake, and I'll tell you why. So I calibrated it in Zwift, and what I did is I got it spun up, and when it says to spin down, I took and lightly dragged my foot against this wheel back here. And that change, it slowed it down much more rapidly than it was slowing down before, and voila. Suddenly, the trainer was actually in the range of where I thought it should be. It was very close to my old trainer here. It felt very similar. It was doing pretty good. So I actually rode it like that for a while. And I actually then took my son's bike, who has a Stages power meter on his crank. I threw it on the trainer and compared them, and it was pretty close. It was still a little bit off here. It was reading a little bit low. So I said, okay, I let that go for a while. I was now able to at least get a workout in and use it. So then I went ahead and I decided last week that I was gonna go ahead and recalibrate it, but this time I was gonna do it in the Kinetic app. Why the Kinetic app? The Kinetic app assigns a number to the calibration. And I don't really know what that number means. Maybe somebody out there does. Feel free to share it down in the comments below. But I went ahead and I started over again with the calibration in the Kinetic app. And I dragged my foot along this thing here. And by the way, I recommend you use sneakers. I used my cleat the first time, and it kind of started to shave the plastic off the top of this flywheel right here. It's just thin plastic. So use sneakers. And I got a 3.56. Threw that on the trainer, used that for a couple of rides. It was way to my benefit, right? It was like being on the lightest road bike, and hey, felt like I might have had an electronic motor down in my crank that was zooming me along. So I knew that wasn't right, but I did ride it for a couple of rides like that. It was good fun. Then I went ahead and I did it again. So the next time I got like a 2.56. That still wasn't right. That was still way off. So I did it one more time, and I got it down to a 1.24. So that 1.24 felt pretty reasonable. It felt like it was about right. I then grabbed my son's bike, threw it on there with his Stages power meter, rode for an hour, and the wattage between the Stages crank and the bike, the trainer, came out at 1 watt difference. And that was both for the average, for the 20-minute FTP, not FTP, the 20-minute average, and then the non-spinning average. So it came out within a wattage, and I'll post a picture of that so you can see it. So what happened then is I started poking around because it was still dropping out every ride. There's nothing more frustrating than being on a ride. I'm on a 2-hour ride last weekend, even today. This morning I'm on a ride, and at 35 minutes it drops out. It just no longer reads the inclines of the game. Everything else is still reading, everything else is still working. So I jumped into the forums. I had posted to the forums on Zwift before about this issue, and there's several other people in there. Well, somewhere in the beginning of December, I hadn't gone back in there, a gentleman by the name of Paul, and I can't pronounce his last name. I will post a link. He's the one who came up with this. He said that he took this trainer apart and he lubed up a brass screw and the guide rails. So basically what's happening is there's too much resistance in moving the magnet towards the flywheel. This is creating a lot of extra heat, and this is all heating up the circuit board. It's heating up everything. And that by lubing this up, this seemed to help out his situation. By the way, I did try putting a cooling fan because somebody had suggested that when I first went into the forums a couple months ago, putting a cooling fan. I had a dual cooling fan aimed right at the side of the housing on the other side of this. That did not help. It still kept dropping out. So anyhow, what we're going to do today is I'm going to go ahead and try this gentleman's fix that he did and see if that works. I'm going to show you those parts and pieces. I'm not going to take you through taking out the screws and stuff like that. I'll pause and I'll come back and show you what's in there and show you what you did and what I did, and then we'll test it out. Mind you, this thing is still under warranty. This will void your warranty. So for the 50 people that are going to watch this video, shh, don't tell Kinetic I'm doing this, right? Anyhow, stand by. We'll go ahead and take this apart, and then I'll bring you back in and I'll show you what it looks like, and we'll see if it works. Thanks. All right, everyone, we are back, and you can see that I already took the cover off. There are 4 screws that hold the cover on. 1, 2, 3, and 4 right there. And they're easily accessible. They use a 2.5 millimeter Allen key to get those screws out. The cover's not clipped in as soon as you take the screws. They're not even very tight. They came right out. This is the flywheel. And the part where he was talking about greasing these plastic rails, I'll show you what he's talking about. They're actually channels. So you can see right in here, there's actually a channel that's down in there. And this whole plate, that's the magnet. And this whole plate right here, slide and ride along this channel. And that screw, that brass screw, is what adjusts that. And those are the things that he was saying that he greased up with bearing grease. One of the things you have to do is the device needs to be plugged in and connected. So I actually have this device, here we go, running on my Kinetic app. Let's see if I can get you an angle without all that light. There we go. So you can see that it's hooked up. That's the device right there. I have it hooked up. One of the things you have to do, and I'll show you this, is you actually have to get the magnet to move, and I'll show you it moving. So you come in here to settings, and you see the calibration toggle is right there. You can see my firmware update 2.4. Hey, by the way, on the firmware update, the firmware has not been updated on this device in 2 years. There was an update that came out 2 years ago. It was for about a month, and then they rescinded it. They pulled it back. So if you're waiting for a firmware update for this device, I don't think so. It's been 2 years now. I can't imagine that there's going to be one. But one of the things you have to do in order to expose that brass bolt more and those channels to get grease in there is you have to take this position and move it. This is if you wanted to, in the Kinetic app, wanted to have this device fixed at a certain resistance. So let's say you were going to take it offline and wasn't going to be connected. You can take and actually lock it into a certain resistance. So in this case, it's at 0, and it actually moved on me when I first went back in there. So now you can see this magnet is exposed. By the way, I took off a cover plate to make this easier to see. This cover plate was right out here on top of this, and I'll put that back and show you in the end. So to get this to move, you have to move this calibration number up. So we're going to move it to 100, and then you'll actually see this thing move. There it goes. So that's the channel it's riding in. It's riding in a channel up here and down here, and then there's the brass bolt. I'm going to grease those, and hopefully we'll see this works. It'd be nice to be able to get these plates off, because this plate is just one side of the channel, here and here, but you can't get to these screws. There's one here and one back here behind this flywheel. I did pull this cover off right here. There's a bolt in there, but you would need an impact wrench or something that can spin much faster than you can with a regular wrench. and try to hold this flywheel still. I could not get it loose. It'd be nice to have the flywheel come off, then you could easily grease both sides of this. I'm gonna go ahead and use a regular sort of bearing grease. That's what this dude recommended. He looked like he was an engineer, by the way. I do have other greases like this Siliglide. This is a synthetic grease, but it's a little more sticky. So I'm gonna go ahead and use a regular bearing grease that I just picked up at the auto parts store to go ahead and lube those. One of the other things that's come an issue too is this circuit board. This circuit board can actually burn out right in this spot right here. That circuit board, that chip burns out from getting too hot. There is a record of this online. There's a guy who actually replaces this circuit board. Mine looks okay at the moment. It's pretty new, it should be. And by the way, this is in the accessories section of the Kinetic web store. So if you go to kinetic.com and you go ahead and look at their stuff and go to accessories, you'll find this circuit board there. That should be another telltale sign of, oh, well, am I really gonna have to replace that circuit board? Well, maybe. So another telltale sign for this Kinetic trainer. Anyhow, I'm gonna go ahead and pause here. I'm gonna go ahead and grease these things up and I'll bring you back when I'm done with that. Just to show you where I'm at, I was able to get this screw out right here, that one just behind the flywheel. And I was able to lift this plate up and then just grease down that whole upper part of this this magnet right here. You can see that kind of moving as I move it back and forth. And this guide plate just kind of keeps that there. So, and I got the bottom best I could. I can't get to this screw that's up under here. So I'm using it, by the way, I'm using a flat paintbrush to just put bearing grease back in there. And I did get the brass bolt pretty good too. And the other thing the guys suggested is to move this back and forth several times. So I've done that a few times already. See it moving away. See the grease that I have in there. And I'm back in the Kinetic app to my left, just bringing it back and forth. There we go. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and put this back together. And by the way, there is a cooling fan in here, but last what I read, and I may have misread this, I don't think this works. This was shut down with a software patch a couple years ago because it was really loud and noisy. I've never felt any air coming through here from a cooling fan, so I think that's probably true. 2.4 software does not allow this cooling fan to run. So it might still be beneficial to have a regular fan blowing on it. I'm gonna put it back together. We're gonna test this out tomorrow and see how it goes. And then I'll give you my final results on all that and let you know. Thanks for tuning in this far. Hey folks, before I button this back up, I should show you the other side. I took the cover off. You don't need to take the cover off for what I did, but I wanted to see what was under there. And there's actually holes in the cover already. You can see there's a hole right smack in the middle next to the word Kinetic. And then there's a little access port right above that sticker. And what that allows you to do is to be able to adjust the belt tension. And there's directions for this on Kinetic's website, but I figured I have it off. I'll show you here. This piece right here, you loosen this in order to get the adjuster to work, and then you adjust with this screw right here that pulls the belt tension back or loosens, whatever the case may be. My belt is within spec. You probably won't have to do this very often, but again, loosen here, adjust here, tighten back up, and you're good to go. In this case, I have the cover off, so it makes it easier to see, but I'll pop the cover back on and talk to y'all soon. So in conclusion, it worked. The hack worked. That's the first ride in the hills I've had where the trainer hasn't crapped out on me. It was smooth, it was fluid, it worked very well. It did get pretty hot. I checked it after the ride. The plastic was pretty hot, so heating up is still a concern. I may actually remove the cover and just run a cooling fan on it to the side to keep it running cooler, to see what that does. But overall, it worked. Do I recommend you do this? No, I do not. I really don't. It voids the warranty. I don't think you should have to do it. I think it's complete BS that I have to work on this trainer at all. And again, Kinetic is probably very aware that there's an issue with this trainer. The fact that you can buy a circuit board on the accessory page to replace in this trainer is probably a good indication that there's problems with this trainer. I didn't know any of that going into it. I didn't do the research. Why? Because I had several Kinetic trainers and Kinetic heart rate monitors and cadence sensors, and they've all worked just great. No issues whatsoever. And Kinetic's customer service has been great. So I bought this trainer based on the price point that it was in September, and it's a little bit of a disaster. Then I started doing the research and found that many other people have these same issues with this trainer. So I can't really recommend this trainer unless you're really, really willing to work with it and try to get it to work at its best for you. Out of the Kinetic trainers, I would recommend the wheel on rock and roll version. That rock and roll piece is absolutely awesome. I love that. Can't say enough about it. That little bit of swaying on the bike makes a big difference when you're sitting still on a trainer for hours at a time. So I really enjoy that piece of it. Hopefully this continues to run as it does. Grease tends to dry up. It can get a little gummy, so I may have to take this apart and redo this later on down the road. But for now, it's good. It's a good ending. Thanks to Paul, who put the post up in Zwift, and I will link that here for trying this out, and I hope you have good luck. Hey, for those of you who have Kinetic trainers, feel free to chat it up in the bottom. Let me know what's worked for you, what hasn't worked for you, how customer service has been, that kind of thing. And then for those of you who wish to post and tell me about how great your Wahoo kicker is, that's fine too. If I wanted to spend that $1,200 or that $900, I would have. But hey, feel free. Appreciate you all watching. Have a great day. Hey everyone, last minute update for you. I was actually getting ready to put this video together and I said, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and put one last tidbit in here. So over the course of the week, we got in about 6 rides in which it worked absolutely great. No issues whatsoever. Last Saturday, I was going into the hills. I was working pretty hard. Zone 4 for me, and in and out of the hills. I had a cooling fan on the plastics. The device did heat up and it did drop out. Super disappointing, super frustrating. So then I decided that I would take the plastics off. So I took the plastic housing off and got a fan that's blowing directly onto the mechanisms. And that seems to have worked. I'll throw a picture in here so you can see what that looks like. And so the following Sunday, which would be a couple days ago, I did a herd race Sunday morning. It was about a 45-minute event, zone 4-5 for me, a little over 200 watts, which I'm not 100% sure if that's accurate on this trainer or not. But it did not crap out. It did very well. It was a hilly ride, hilly race. It was great. Today, my son did an FTP test on it, and I immediately jumped on and I did a Cat C cadence ride. So it's about 2.5 hours of pretty consistent riding, and it did not crap out. So I think that helps for the overheating problem, which then shuts it down so it no longer reads the incline and declines of the Zwift game. So that seems to be working so far. I'm going to go ahead and post this video, and if anything else changes, I will type it up and let you know. So thanks again for watching. Just thought I'd share this last little update with you. Have a great night.